You in the company of myself, Siraj, keeping you company. As I said, a robust discussion this evening, talking about the situation in Pakistan, which we did with Muhammad Ayaz just now. And let's shift the focus. Let's shift the paradigm. Let's bring on the focus to South Africa. It's an election year. It's 2024, 30 years since democracy. And gosh, we see so much happening. The new political party as well on the block. And what are we likely to see happen? And then we'll shift over onto some of the woes that we are facing here in the eThekwini region. Let me take this opportunity to welcome with great pleasure onto the airwaves of Radio Al Ansar my guest this evening, Mr. Samuel Kennedy, who is no stranger to the show. Good evening and welcome to Radio Al Ansar.
News in Focus.
I'm just confused with my own program name.
Thank you, thank you, Siraj, and in absentia, because Yunus is in absentia. Let's wish Yunus well.
He's here in spirit. He's sitting in the corner in spirit
on his Hajj or
Umrah, yeah.
And life will make sure that, like you say, he's here in spirit, and we'll do whatever we need to do to tell the listeners, educate them,
absolutely,
enlighten them, and enable them to draw calculated conclusions politically as to 2024 national and provincial elections.
Now, I'm not sure how much of the previous interview you actually did hear, but there's a lot said about the political landscape in Pakistan, given the whole Imran Khan situation. Let's bring it to South Africa. How good or how lucky are we? How better off are we, from other democracies in that respect?
I think I follow the dynamics of India, Pakistan, and North African countries. I think we South Africans are ideologically, mentally, emotionally still stuck in the concept of where we come from, which was minority rule. So minority rule still sort of lingers in our memories, and consequentially we tend to lose focus on what have we attained and what have we lost. And I think post 94, I think we've attained quite a bit in terms of the repeal of many oppressive laws. But in terms of real services, because ultimately that is what voters, that is what citizens, that is what residents require. They require the basic delivery of decent services. And decent services is actually a misnomer, because it's actually getting to a stage where services are now becoming scarce. Maybe that's the correct English translation. So from going to regular, decent services, we're now going to irregular, poor, scarce services like Eskom, like water, like repairing of potholes or roads, like standard of work. We see, particularly in municipalities, work is either duplicated, replicated over and over and over. Roads are dug up and left unattended to. Most of our people, most of the listeners on this station drive good cars. A lot of them drive cars and are having to replace tires, damaging rims. So those are the dynamics of the effect of poor services. Quality of water. We can't swim in beaches now, certain beaches, not all, because of the dynamics of E. coli. And that's a wake-up call to voters, to citizens, to residents. what are we going to do about it? Because that is the standard by which we enable ourselves to achieve better services, as opposed to being stuck in that quandary of, we come from an oppressive regime, we now have what is perceived to be
a democratic
regime.
Yeah.
But it's like conundrums, like contrasts. We're stuck in that vacuum, and I think that's something we need to talk about.
Very interesting that this term that you had mentioned, where resources become scarce. Or services rather, not resources, become scarce. It's such a bizarre thing to comprehend. Like, those two words don't go together. You can't fathom it being together. So at which point, do those in the corridors of power switch off and just fall back and be like, okay, we're not doing this? Or when does this whole idea of pulling back, of denying the services comes into play, where they take a step back and we see what we see happening at the moment come into play?
And I'm talking specifically to the category of listener that we are talking to, which is primarily Muslim, those of mixed race origin, those of Indian origin. We have a lot of listeners in Joburg. I'm told quite a bit of listeners in Vereniging, Pretoria, of white groupings. But ultimately, they all fall into the category of, for a political reference term, called minorities. And the problem with minorities is we tend to be indifferent. The harsh slang term is gatfol, and consequentially we don't go and vote, because we think, why should we vote? Because we're wasting our time.
Right.
Not realizing that the political dynamics at play currently demand that we go and vote. And this is the deal. So I'm going to try and conceptualize and bring everything into a clearer understanding for voters and listeners.
Absolutely. So clearly it is going down that road. I mean, it all comes down to the ballot, as you've pointed out. We are in an election year, 2024. And so let's talk about that. Let's focus on that. Let's begin with something that I've told you when I met you. When I met you at dinner, it was the souk, it was in December, when we sat around the round table, and I made a statement that is our political playing field dogged with too many parties, and you were in disagreement with that.
Agreed.
You were in disagreement. So can you tell us why? I know why, but explain to those, of course, that were not present. Why do you feel that our political playing field does not have too many players on it?
Look, is it about the number of players, or is it about the intent of those competing? In other words, if we have 2 or 3 parties competing, what are their ideological views or ideological principles versus let's presuppose there's 20 and the views will be, looking at the 2019 ballot sheet, generally, and this is facts, 99% of all black, deemed to be African black political parties are ideologically left-leaning, socialist, Fanonist, Marxist, communist, dialectical, materialist, Stalinist. They embrace those values. On the right, you have predominantly white-led, white makeup political parties like the Freedom Front Plus, slightly to the center, the Democratic Alliance, which is neoliberal or liberal, and Inkatha will obviously be center-left, which is maybe not communist, but socialist leaning. And so that's the debate, or that's the conundrum as voters we find in South Africa. We have a very narrow ideological view. Now you have 20 players, for example, 20 players. 20 players means that democracy is thriving, it's flourishing. When democracy flourishes, you have more value, more choices. Let me give you an example. We talk about free markets. So I'm shifting focus as an analogy. We would be fed up as individuals if we were only forced to buy a Prada, correct, as a motor vehicle. But we want choice.
Yeah.
Because that is a definition of democracy. Definition, freedom to choose. You want to be able to choose howsoever you want to choose. Now let's take a factual point. In Europe, at the European Union, in Germany, in Italy, in Poland, in Serbia, most of what is deemed to be the liberal, even in France, which is a socialist state, the small parties are generally the deciding parties.
Right, right.
And so you have a multi-party system that has lent itself to a coalition government. Now the problem when you have one or two parties, you don't have coalition governments, meaning that you're stuck with a particular value or a particular view. So we want to see more parties. However, and now I'm taking you back to the Sook, the Constitutional Court has just ruled that now we can have independent candidates,
Yes.
not political parties. So in actual fact, the Constitutional Court, which is the highest court in the land, is saying, in order for you to have proper democratic ideals that live up to the Constitution, you need more players. In other words, your current system is not correct. You need to open it up so that individuals can also put their hand up and say, I want to stand as a candidate.
Those that are not party-based or
Those are not
affiliated to any-
party-based.
Yeah, not affiliated to any party.
And so what it's done is you now have, it's an open sesame, open scenario. People, anyone can stand up and say, I wish to stand as a candidate president. However, and this is where the litmus test is, litmus test. The Constitutional Court has said, as much as we might have opened it up, there needs to be some minimum criteria. And the minimum criteria for those who are entering into the process for the first time, whether as independent candidates or as unrepresented parties, are you need to have certain thresholds. And they've put together a list, and that is the list.
Okay, right.
And the list says, in order for you to put your name on the ballot sheet,
Right.
your face or the name of your party, you need to have registered, loaded into the system with people who say with their name, ID, residential address, or whatever howsoever you want to populate that list, 15% of the 2019 actual voting results per region.
Right.
So, for example, if you only want to contest KZN on its own, you need to have 6,664 signatures in order to qualify. Likewise, if you want to contest KZN regionally, so you got provincial, regionally meaning
The eThekwini.
no, regionally meaning you want to contest national and provincial. So you want to do either one, the national and one province.
Right.
You need to have in excess of 13,000 signatures.
Okay. Right.
And that applies to the independent candidates as well. So what is done now for the voter, because everybody thinks, well, having a long ballot sheet is going to create issues. We don't want to have a long ballot sheet. Let's see whether everybody contesting for the first time will be able to meet that criteria of 15% signatures. If you do that, you're in the game. That's the first game, the first step to the game. The second step is you need to have money.
Yeah.
And to contest KZN, for example, is 45,000. To contest South Africa as a national is 260,000. So it's already 300,000. So by the time you start adding all these things up, billboards, T-shirts, posters, howsoever other paraphernalia you want to do, your bills are in excess of 1 million.
Right.
That is already a barrier to entry if you're a businessman.
Yeah.
So your barriers to entry are quite high, and therefore the principle of certain views that no, we shouldn't have a long-winded ballot sheet is not entirely correct. The Constitutional Court has said, bring it on condition
You meet these.
you meet
requirements,
certain criteria, and if you do, it's good for democracy.
Yeah. But that's also to ensure, otherwise any Tom or Harry will just go and put his
Absolutely.
name on the ballot sheet.
Absolutely.
So clearly, yes, you've clearly explained that there is a need for this, and that's why we're going to see more parties. Many parties have come up already, and others will go ahead. Come up in light of the upcoming elections, which, by the way, the date of the president has not set yet, and this weekend is the final voter registration weekend. So we need to keep that in mind. You don't even have to go to to a polling station. You can even do it online, as the entire system has been streamlined nowadays, and it's a lot more easier. So looking at that, and on that note, there's a new kid on the block, as they say, the Umkhonto weSizwe Party. Now, for those that don't know, the Umkhonto weSizwe, of course, was the armed wing of the ANC during the liberation struggle, and carrying out the ANC operations within South Africa. And now it's going down the political party route. So if we were to look at this on merits, how does this MK party, distinguish itself from other political parties that are already in South Africa's political landscape? What sets them apart?
You want me to respond?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. If just as a precursor, so I don't forget, so it's very live in my head.
Sure, go ahead.
On multi-party activity, multi-party representativity, did you know that in Europe, in the EU, for example, the party that holds the balance to power in most European countries is the Green Party.
The Green Party.
And the Green Party, they are anti-nuclear, they are pro-climate change, etc., etc. They're anti-fossil fuel.
In the name.
So they cater for a particular group of people.
Right.
And if we say, or if the notion, which is espoused by some, that you shouldn't have a long-winded ballot sheet, you actually are ostracizing, prejudicing certain group of people as much as they are minority. You actually excluding them, whereas representative democracy means that it should be inclusive and not exclusive. I just wanted to make that point. But coming back to MK, I think what we've seen in South Africa is an evolving political process of starting at beginning, 1990, 1994 election, peaking at 99 under Thabo Mbeki. Mbeki got 67+% or 66+%, somewhere thereabouts, without going into the actual percentage. And then a slight decline with the emergence of Jacob Zuma into power, and a further decline with the advent of Matomela Ramaphosa. And so the African voter is frustrated. And he's frustrated because a lot of promises were made.
Right.
Mandela said a better life. Zuma said together we can do things. Ramaphosa came up with a different slogan. And so they've been hanging on to this expectation vis-a-vis free education, vis-a-vis more houses, free electricity, free water, not whole but in part. And these things haven't happened for a number of reasons. One was COVID. The other one was the 2008 recession. And so we've had a few blips. And the ANC is trying to juggle how it can service that constituency, which is restless. I've seen the statistics that the number of protestations in informal settlements and in black townships has actually sprung quite considerably. And now we see, just 2 days ago, major protestations in Phoenix,
Yes.
Verulam, Ottawa, blocking roads, burning tires, something which we didn't see in so-called Indian areas 20 years ago. So you can see how things are changing.
Right.
And then
right.
in the midst of that, we then see the emergence of MK. What is MK? To define them, they are a replica of the ANC. They haven't espoused different values, so they haven't come out and said we differ with the ANC on X, Y, and Z. They said we only differ with the ANC because one is ANC under Ramaphosa and the other one is MK under Zuma. So that's the only difference.
Right.
And it's a populist difference.
All right. Okay. Speaking about that, we know the former president, of course, has endorsed that party, and that has gotten him in some hot water with his current political party. We'll uncover all of that after the news. It is coming on to 9 o'clock right now, and it is almost news time. So we're going to take that break and find out what's happening out in the world and come back with more information.
Breaking news, this are 31st of January. The news from Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Maritzburg 105.6 FM. Mayor Kaunda survives on no confidence vote. Good evening, America Monina. The Etegwini Council has voted against a motion of no confidence against the Mayor, Lisi Kaunda. IFP, Inkatha Freedom Party, filed the motion in November 2023, supported by the DA Democratic Alliance, citing service delivery issues and damning findings by the Auditor General, among other challenging matters. Speaker Tabani Yausi announced how the council voted during a meeting today. He says those who are in support of the motion are 98, and those who are against the motion are 109, and those who abstained are 2. Yausi therefore says that the notice of motion against Kaunda has been rejected by the majority. President Ramaphosa says government is working on a freight logistics roadmap to improve rail and port efficiency and competitiveness. The president launched South Africa's first shipment and preferential trading under the Continental Free Trade Agreement. The agreement brings African countries and 8 regional economic communities together. Its mission is to remove trade barriers and boost intra-African trade. President Ramaphosa says the preferential trade will bring great opportunities for South Africa's growth and development. In other news, the Independent Electoral Commission IEC says it rejects utterances by former President Jacob Zuma claiming the commission is biased. Independent Electoral Commission Deputy Chairperson Janet Love says such utterances by political parties or figures are an attempt to inject insurrectionist mood into the election.
In relation to the Commission having been biased, I think what we would say to any political party, and that includes the unrepresented political parties, is that as soon as a political party is part of the process for an upcoming election, they are also part of the process of joining with the Commission to ensure that the elections are managed in a way that is free and fair. The Commission has received absolutely no evidence of bias and rejects this kind of talk that attempts to really inject into our country almost an insurrectionist mood. It is unacceptable, it's undemocratic.
More news now. International Relations Minister Naledi Pandor believes that Israel is ignoring the ICJ order as Israel carries out more bombardments. Earlier today, Naledi Pandor says Israel has been defiant.
Be dishonest. I believe that the rulings of the court have been ignored by Israel. Hundreds of people have been killed in the last 3-4 days. And clearly Israel believes it has license to do as it wishes. So the world does have to reflect, because we're going to come to a point where we have to think, what do we do to stop such acts occurring, not just with Israel, but any party in the world. We know that we were unable to protect Rwandan citizens when they faced a massive slaughter and a genocide. We are allowing this to happen again right before our eyes on TV screens.
Staying with that story, Pandor further says that with Israel's defiance, other measures have to be considered.
South Africa has taken the bold step of approaching the ICJ. We succeeded with the provisional measures application. I think we now have to look at proposing other measures to the global community, but also securing international solidarity on this matter in support of the Palestinian people.
The Johannesburg Council is meeting today to discuss a range of issues. Importantly, it will look into the safety of councillors following a shooting in Zakaria Park earlier in the week. Rand Water Executive Tebogo Joale and his bodyguard were killed in the attack. Margaret Arnold, Johannesburg Council Speaker, has this to say.
Remember the cases with SAPS at the moment, and SAPS is investigating. As the City of Johannesburg, we are waiting to get a report from SAPS, and when we have that report, we are able to respond and to react as to what it is that we need to put in place as the City of Johannesburg. So currently, we can't really investigate because we are not sure what really went down and how it went, but from what we know, it seemed like an assassination. I know that this was really directed at the Rand Water official and not really at the councillor, but we also know that we're entering a very silly season, and it's just before elections, and normally things like that does happen. It's not that it's normal, but it does happen. And
international story: Yemen's Houthi militia stated its plans, saying there will be more attacks on United States and British warships. The Iran-aligned group released a statement today saying all US and British warships participating in aggression against Yemen are targets. Report says the statement stoked concern over the similar intentions in the region, as well as has increased disruption to world trade. The Houthis, who control most parts of Yemen, have launched drones and missiles at shipping in the Red Sea and Gulf of Aden since the 19th of November. The group said the attacks are a response to Israel's military operations in Gaza. Quick reminder of our top story. The Tigrini Council has voted against a motion of no confidence against Mayor Kolisi Kaunda. That's the news.
An informative Islamic global perspective. This is Al Ansar News. Radio Al Ansar.
This azan is sponsored for the Isale Sawab of Marhum Muhammad Farooq Latib and all Marhumin. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant them the highest abode in Jannah. Ameen.
أعزائي المستمعين، حان الآن موعد أذان العشاء لمدينة دربن وما حولها.
أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الدعوة التامة والصلاة القائمة آت محمدا الوسيلة والفضيلة والدرجة الرفيعة وابعثه مقاما محمودا الذي وعدته وارزقنا شفاعته يوم القيامة إنك لا تخلف الميعاد.
This dua brought to you by Simplex Radio, South Africa's leading retailer of appliances, car sound and home theater systems.
These surahs after Azan are brought to you by Amina's Wonder Spice and Wonder Dates, 9 Peters Road, Springfield, Durban.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwa Allahu ahad, Allahu as-samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul a'udhu bi rabbil falaq min sharri ma khalaq wa min sharri ghasiqin idha waqab wa min sharri النفاثات في العقد ومن شر حاسد إذا حسد. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. قل أعوذ برب الناس ملك الناس إله الناس من شر الوسواس الخناس الذي يوسوس في صدور الناس من الجنة والناس.
This salah was proudly brought to you by Khan's Chemical Industry. May this salah enlighten your soul and bring about endless blessings throughout your day.
Having a clean, comfortable home is every homeowner's pride. That's why Khan's Chemicals have developed and manufactured prime yet affordable quality household brands Starlight, Miracle Mum, Exterminate and Angie to care for your home and family. With a wide range of fabric softeners, dishwashing liquids, bleachers and all-purpose cleaners, pine gels, bubble baths and much more, Khan's Chemicals ensures your home remains our #1 priority. For sales and other inquiries, call 011 933 4021. Khan's Chemicals, cleaning your home the way you want.
We'd love to meet you. Pay us a visit. Radio Al Ansar.
Siraj Vasa on Radio Al Ansar.
90.4 to 105.6. It is Radio Al Ansar. Welcome to it. It is now 14 minutes past the hour of 9. If you're just joining us, Assalamu alaikum. It is News in Focus with myself, Siraj, sitting in for Brother Yunus Sakur this Wednesday evening. Now, we do apologize for the slightly late time that the Isha Adhan had played. That was due to time constraints in our first hour of riveting discussion. But nonetheless, I'm sure that you prayed your salah, and do remember us in your duas as well. Not only us, but all those the world over. On the program, we had a robust discussion on the situation in Pakistan, the issue of local politics. We're going to continue with that, and in a bit as well, we're going to be looking at the IMF, the growth forecast for South Africa, looking quite bleak for 2024. Let me welcome back once again, Mr. Samuel Kennedy. Great to still have you here in studio with me.
Thanks, Siraj, and it's good to see my friend. It's good to see my friend Hassan Motala here, and I'm sure he'll expound. As much as we have an interest in the election, I'm sure we all have a monetary, financial issue in the back of our heads.
Absolutely.
So that's a critical matter. So I'll try and not take as much time to enable him to
talk about all things money related.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Without money, we can't do anything.
So we discussed, the new kid on the block, so to speak, and the reason for having this many, political parties. Now, we mentioned that Jacob Zuma, of course, he's of course thrown his weight behind the new political party, the MK, whilst still being a card-carrying member of the ANC, and that largely went unnoticed up until yesterday, I think, when the ANC had made a call with regards to his membership. How is it that the former president of the Republic of South Africa, representing, the ANC, is now pledging his support for another party?
Well, he says, look, the long and short of it, here's the deal. There's an issue. You remember, Jacob Zuma brought Cyril Ramaphosa out of retirement.
Yes.
Cyril was in the business wilderness, and in 2012 at the Mangaung conference, Zuma chose Cyril Ramaphosa as his deputy.
Right.
And they went to the 2017 election, where Cyril competed against Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, and he won by about 24 votes. And that's where the crack appeared, where the allegation, which is kind of credible allegation, was that Cyril had bought his way, and you have that little what the statement the one that goes around called the CR17 bank statements, which ended up in court, was taken by the EFF and a few others, and the court said that it shouldn't be opened, which is undemocratic, to be quite honest with you, because a true democracy, you must be able to. It cannot be a conflict, a contrast of interests. Those who sponsor political players must be. That's true democracy. You must know who they are. And so it was quite strange that the Constitutional Court, or the High Court, in fact, ruled against it. But coming back to the Jacob Zuma issue, so he's been sitting, sweating bullets for 5 years, and then come 2 years ago at the conference in Nasrec, they put in a limp candidate called Zweli Mkhize, and he lost by not a wide margin, but a significant margin. And obviously that, again, there's an allegation that money was put on, money was working its way around under the table, and so Zuma is coupled with the fact that he got arrested. He was arrested, incarcerated. And so a lot of things, we had the looting, the violence, whatever. And so he's if you look at what they've been doing, how they've been doing, why they've been doing, they actually more organized than some of the organized representative political parties, which tells a story that something has been brewing, not since yesterday. It's been brewing for a while.
When you say they, you're referring to?
Talking about the MK.
Oh, okay, right.
MK.
Yeah.
Now, I said to you, this is how it's going to pan out. The projections or the estimates, rightly or wrongly, are saying that in KZN, MK will sweep. No two ways. The black population in KZN, in their majority, dislike Cyril Ramaphosa. They have absolute disdain for him. So there's no two ways that MK will win KZN. We don't know by how big a majority, but certainly by a majority. And so the ANC is going to lose KZN as a province. Two, Mpumalanga will be a 50-50, if not a 60-40 in favor of the ANC, but they're going to lose at least 30-40%. in Gauteng, which is going to be the tightest battle to the post, the ANC will lose power. In 2021, they just about lost power. And in 2019, they just about lost power. So they will lose power, and that'll be a coalition. And MK will be a player. The excitement that brewed pre-December 16 advent of MK was that the multi-party charter, they were putting out press statements that they're going to take over, they close to taking over the ANC, etc., etc. Suddenly they muted, and they muted on the basis that they've realized that with Jacob Zuma coming into the offing, they now no longer stand a chance. Why? And this is the fact, because facts don't lie. In South Africa, out of every 10 voters, living voters, we're not talking about dead voters now, out of every 10 living voters, 8 are black. 8 are African black. So where's the contestation going to be? Contestation is going to be between those who are competing for the black vote. However, here's the deal. The minority vote are going to be the deciding vote, because it's going to be a fine line nationally between the ANC and MK. So somebody's going to have to break that, right? Because either way, if the ANC decides to go with the DA, it's still going to be a fine line. If the MK decides to form an alliance with all the other players, it's still going to be a fine line. In fact, yesterday, the IFP for the first time said, through its president, who I know very well, they said, we're happy to work with MK. And I said to myself, good Lord, just they signed an agreement with DA and all these other guys to say we're part of the MP. And now they've said, 2 days, yesterday, no, we're prepared to work with MK as long as they align with our values. Now, of course they align with your values. What are your values? I mean, we're not that stupid. So it's going to be a very big dynamic. And the reason for that, with the IFP, we have it on absolute authority that the Youth League of the IFP are absolutely anti-working with the DA. Absolute.
So that brings a whole lot of doubt over the Moonshot Pact.
Oh, Moonshot Pact is dead in the water.
Dead
in
on
the
arrival.
water.
Yeah.
So this is what's I believe is going to happen. And most of the residents in Durban got water problems. I know Assad Kafar is doing a pretty good job with ratepayers, with his tenacious hammering them on the bills and all the other stuff. Even though he lost the one case, I still think he's got some credibility back. This is what's going to happen. The sitting councillors of eThekwini, whose term expires in 2026, at least a third will jump to MK, because they loyal Zuma people.
Wow.
At least a third. What is that going to do? That will precipitate by-elections. By-elections. Yesterday, the ANC got Kaunde in by 5 votes. We just did the calc now. 5 votes. 30% of 110 is just over 35 votes. Right?
Right.
35. So 33 votes. 33 is 35 votes. Which means if the ANC is only won by 5 votes in the next few weeks leading to the national and provincial elections, once these by-elections are called, the ANC is history in the city of Durban for the first time since 1996.
Wow.
And that is a momentous occasion. It's welcomed. The only problem is power is shifted to exactly the same ideological party, only with a different color. Okay?
Right.
One is wearing green, the other one's wearing green and gold. And so what we're saying to voters is what you need to do is you need to coalesce around as minorities. And why I'm saying this, the DA's won Phoenix hands down, 2021. They want Phoenix, hand down. Out of 10 wards, they want 10 or 9, right? But they haven't been able to have that critical mass that influences the governing party to make the changes that they wanted. So there's a lot of stuff happening where they're fighting each other under the table.
Right.
And so citizens are being prejudiced because of politics. DA-ANC.
It's the citizen that suffers.
It's the citizen that suffers.
As we're seeing happening
We
right now.
saying to the voters, folks, you've seen now yesterday, Truly Alliance, vote with the ANC. Why are you voting for them? You might as well just vote for the ANC.
Right.
PFP, same story. ACC, same story. You can't blame them for taking that choice because that's democracy. That's a choice they made. But you created them to make that choice. Because if you'd voted correctly, the ANC could have been kept on their toes and or removed, right? So by our choices, we have the situation. Lastly, we had in the studio at the Souk Duduzane Zuma.
Yes.
We had dinner with him.
Right.
And he had a lot to say about his father, and he doesn't agree with Jacob Zuma, and Winston Innes said, we were there, we told Baba, we don't agree with him, wara.
There was a lot of discussion. And
a lot of discussion.
And also discussion of a new political forum that was supposed to be launched in January.
He's launched
It's
a week ago, called Game Changers. This is my view. Blood, thicker than water. He can tell me whatever he likes. He will side with MK post-elections, and hence I'm saying to voters, don't be lulled, don't be fooled, don't be convinced or persuaded by Trojans. Vote wisely. Vote for credible people. Vote for people that you know can make a difference, even in their minority status.
Right.
And lastly, never forget one basic phenomenon. In 2023, while Jacob Zuma was still a member of good standing, that's a political word.
Right.
Member of good standing of the ANC, they passed a bill called the Employment Equity Act of 2023. And in that bill, they said minorities must be compromised at the expense of the majority. It's fact. It's in the books. It's in the statute books. We opposed it, me in particular.
Right.
I did a 15-page document, a legal document with facts, fully researched. The bill has been withdrawn. And part of the reason why I opposed it was on the basis that they said in Durban in particular, Durban constitutes between 22 and 24% Indian, or deemed to be Indian, of Indian origin.
Right.
They said, going forward propositionally, no longer 22 to 24% projections on different economic sectors. They took it down to 11%, which was a 50% reduction.
Right.
That's an injustice. They did the same in Cape Town. Cape Town's got only over 44% coloured. They took it down to about 28%. And they upped the black African from 36% to over 40%. In their wisdom, they try to create what we call parity, and while doing that, they created discrimination. So I'm saying, never forget those type of things. Because when you start voting for the African National Congress, the Minority Front, the Inkatha Freedom Party, the Truly Alliance, the ACC, the all these little parties that suddenly we now see Viswan Reddy making public pronouncements about or on behalf of on behalf of MK, ATM. These are all Africanist parties. That's fact. They don't have the interests of minorities. They believe in majoritarianism. They don't believe in the principle of pluralism, and they don't believe in the principle of minority. And so I'm saying to you, to the listener, be very careful how you vote, but don't be indifferent. You must go to the polls. You must make your mark. You must believe in the principle that even voting for a minority party, for example, like in Europe where they have the Green Party, those are game changers. Not Duduzane Zuma, not MK, not ANC, not ATM, not ACC, not TA, definitely not Mulana Tariq and all these cronies. Those guys have proven to voters that their interests are more in ANC party politics than in ensuring that voters get decent water.
We're gonna have to get them on the platform as well, and we're gonna have to discuss this, I'm sure, at greater length. But we have run out of time. We have our next guest who's on the line, Mr. Sembo Kennedy. Thanks so much for coming on and chatting to us this evening. I'm so used to saying afternoon. Thanks a lot. We'll take a quick ad break and then we'll continue.
The views and opinions expressed by the guest and presenters of Radio Al Ansar are not necessarily the views and opinions of Radio Al Ansar and the Al Ansar Foundation.
My darling Siciliana, before you go, I want to say I love you. I stretched you by hand, added my secret Napoletana sauce, covered you in irresistible toppings. I will miss you.
Order ready! Every Pizza Boy Square pizza is crafted to perfection. So while it's hard to say goodbye, we know they're going to a good place. Visit pizzaboys.co.za. We don't cut corners. You can taste it.
Discover our new range of exotic perfumes, ouds and bukhur, straight from Dubai, now available at Wonder Dates. We stock a wide selection of Nabil and Chris Adams fragrances, perfect for your unique lifestyle. But that's not all. We also cater to your Islamic lifestyle needs with prayer mats, tasbeehs, dua stickers, bukhur burners and mizwaks. Looking for herbal capsules and essential oils? Look no further. Experience the beauty of Wonder Dates. Shop now and elevate your senses.
Monday to Friday, 6 to 7 p.m.
It is 21:34, 9:34. If you're clock watching, it is News in Focus on Radio Al Ansar. Now, the International Monetary Fund downgraded its economic growth forecast for South Africa. The economy will likely grow a meager 1% this year, as opposed to previous forecasts by the IMF showing a slightly more positive outlook. Well, joining us on the line, joining us in studio now to speak more about this, we have our resident economist, Brother Hassan Mutala. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, and welcome to the program.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Good to be here tonight with you, Siraj.
How are you doing this evening?
Alhamdulillah, yourself?
Alhamdulillah, all good, but clearly the outlook is not looking too good from the IMF. What has led the IMF to come up with this assessment? What are some of the key driving factors that led the forum to make this assessment?
Sure. So I think if you go back to October last year, IMF was sort of, in terms of from a South African perspective, was looking around 1.8% growth for 2024. So we must look at what are the key challenges that have happened in the last couple of months and what they're anticipating to take place during the course of this year. Two key areas. Firstly, load shedding. We saw in November and December as well that we had upticks in terms of load shedding going to stage 6. it's come down quite rapidly. So we're now currently around stage 2, stage 3, but there is volatility in that. I mean, within an hour or two, they just change and you can move up to stage 4, stage 6 pretty quickly. So the issue is around concerns around still energy-related issues and the impact that it has on the economy. And that's obviously one of the factors that they've downgraded it. The second issue, and it's a very important issue for a country like South Africa, which is a massive exporter of resources and agricultural products, and that is the challenges that we're facing around logistics and the ports. If you go back to end of November, December, Durban was chaos in terms of the port.
Yes.
The port at one point in time had around 70,000 containers that were sitting at the port in December. And that was because of challenges around clearing the ports, clearing the containers and getting them through and obviously delivering it to customers throughout the country and also exporting it throughout the globe as well. Major issue. We have seen some improvement though. So while I think there is a concern that these logistics and the issues around freight will continue and hamper economic growth during the course of this year, we have seen at least some improvement in the last 6 weeks or so, let's say about 5 to 6 weeks in Durban and in some of the other. But Durban in particular was the major. Remember, Durban is one of our biggest in terms of ports, export activity and trading activity. It is the biggest in South Africa.
Yes.
And you have any major challenges in terms of congestion, it impacts us as a country. The second issue is even in Cape Town. So while Durban has been the focal point, very recently you've seen agriculture exports are potentially under pressure. Remember, we're going into the next couple of months. South Africa is a major exporter of citrus. So it's oranges, lemons, nachis, mandarin, all of those type of fruits are exported across Europe. And that season will kick off very soon over the next couple of months. Cape Town is already talking about congestion and potential issues. Now they're trying to rectify it. I see Transit talking about over the weekend that there's a lot more. They're trying to put more capacity in terms of people, trying to get people working overtime and that to try and process and get some of the stuff cleared and exports starting to improve. But these things take time, and that's our biggest challenge. Remember, I think to be, I always try to look things a little bit more positively. I think while we've seen a downgrade, we got to look at it from a perspective. 2023 growth was around 0.6, 0.7%. So even though the IMF has downgraded from 1.8 to 1%, it's still anticipated to be better than 2023.
There's still some growth.
There's still some growth. So we're still expecting. It's not fantastic and it's clearly not what we want. We want it to be a lot better so that you can have job creation. But I think we're moving upwards and hopefully we'll continue to move upwards. I think when we look at the SA economy in terms of a couple of key sectors, there's potentially one or two bright sparks or that could outperform and be better than expected during the course of 2024. The one important and one, I think, key area is tourism. Cape Town had one of their best December, January periods ever. The number of visitors and in terms of flights and tourist numbers that came in December in Cape Town was phenomenal. And it's not only foreigners. I mean, obviously December, I think every dog and his cat and whoever it is from Durban and Joburg was in Cape Town.
Yeah.
Many people were there.
We have to note as well that Durban lost the tourism because of our beaches. 40% down, of course, was Cape Town's gain.
Correct, 100%. So Cape Town had the beaches were perfect. Really, they had some challenges. Mind you, if you've noted about like Muizenberg and certain areas around, there was also some challenges around some of their beaches.
Yes.
But by and large, there were no issues around the beaches. There were no issues around accommodation.
Yes.
There was no issues around transport. Any of those issues, there was no major issues. So they benefited substantially from both foreign arrivals and also domestic arrivals. Normally, Durban is a phenomenal place, but I think when we look at KZN, Durban had a tough period, but the coastal areas didn't do too badly. So if you went up Ballito upwards, or if you went on the south coast right through to, whether it was Port Edward or Shelley Beach and up that ways, they had relatively good periods. But Durban itself, right through, whether it's your North Beach, South Beach, right through up to Umhlanga,
Right.
they had a tough period because of the beaches. The
Right.
beaches was the key, remember, when you're coming in December and January, good hot weather, when you're coming to Durban, you're coming for the beach. People from Johannesburg, they flock over here because there's no beaches there. So they're coming they're coming to stay in our, whether it's the sands or the Cabana beaches or whatever it may be on the Umhlanga side. And even on the south coast, but they're coming for the beaches and they want to enjoy it. And after the experience that they had in the previous December, January, again, that was a dampener. And that is one of the major issues we've had in terms. If you look at what we've got here, we've got fantastic coastline. If you look at our coastline relative to other parts of the country, we've got an excellent coastline on KZN. We've got fantastic weather. We've got decent hotels. We've got good eateries, good restaurants, all of that. But our service delivery and maintenance of a lot of the infrastructure has deteriorated substantially over the last couple of years.
Absolutely.
And it is biting us. And tourism is one area which can generate a lot of employment, and it creates a lot of employment. If you look at it, many things are moving towards tech and AI and the like. But tourism, when you're going to a restaurant or you're going to a hotel, and all, while they may be still tech driven, there's still a lot of people that are employed in those establishments.
Right.
And that drives employment, that drives economies. We need to sort out our infrastructure. That is the key issue, not only in Durban, but in Johannesburg and in whether it's Mpumalanga. And these are, in Mpumalanga, the gateway to the Kruger, in those areas. Joburg's got, if you look at it, whether it's you're going to a Sun City, people first get into OR Tambo, from there, then they're dispersing and going elsewhere. We need to sort out our infrastructure.
Right.
And unfortunately, that will take time. There needs to be a change in mindset. But the SOEs and the key SOEs have deteriorated substantially. We saw it with Eskom, but Eskom, I think, while they're still under massive pressure, what has happened in South Africa over the last 2 years? Private sector and private, you and I, owners, and the like, have been putting in solar, have been putting in alternative energy. The reason really why we actually at load stage 2 and stage 3, and not rather the stage 4, 5 or 6, is that you have had benefit of the solars and alternative energy that has lowered the impact on the grid over this period as well.
Right.
And I think during the course of this year, there'll be more of that private sector, whether it's the corporates or the households and the like, bringing in still more of that alternative energy. So I'm a bit more optimistic in terms of the impact of energy on our economic growth during the course of this year. I think relative to 2023, we should have a much better year in terms of load shedding relative to, but my key concern still remains around the transport and freight related activity. And that, I think, it's going to be an area of focus and a challenge during the course of this year in particular.
How much of emphasis is our government authorities putting on that to streamline that process, to make sure that it's efficient, to make sure that it's up and running in full speed?
The unfortunate thing is we haven't seen. Look, I think they're trying, and now you've seen they're trying to change the board. They're trying to change a few things and try to sort that out in terms of transfer. But these things take time, and I think we'll have some improvement. You need, I think, a bit more some private-public partnerships to come through, and where you'll find some improvement. Think about it this way: government, if you look at it, they own all the rail infrastructure.
Right.
They own many of the, whether it's the ports and the like. You can still continue to own that. Own it. Have partnerships with private operators that can run those tracks, and government can still earn an income from it, lease it, earn operating income or rental incomes or whatever it may be. but have more efficient operators running. And they can do that in many areas. Similarly with the ports. We're losing at the moment. Do you know, with what's happening in the Middle East and the diversion around the Red Sea because of the Houthis and the like,
Right.
there's a lot of traffic that will be coming around the Cape of Good Hope and moving around. We could benefit from that. Some of them will stop there, some of them will carry on, depending, but could benefit from that. But South Africa is also seeing, because of our challenges, people are being forced to go to Maputo,
Right.
to use the Maputo ports for their exports rather than using all our ports, because of the challenges we're having around Durban and Richards Bay and Cape Town. Those are our big ports in terms of exporting our minerals, our resources, and our agricultural products. Just the other day, we saw news now that on the beef and cattle industry, it's going to be an uptick in that in terms of exports. Saudi Arabia, for the first time in 20 years, has allowed now exports of beef from South Africa to come there. So they're starting that will start to gain momentum. China has already now allowing beef to start coming, and in fact, China has now signed a deal with some of the poultry producers. You know what they call these? It's a famous name, walkie-talkies. Amongst the local population in particular, they love walkie-talkies. What is walkie-talkies? Your chicken feet. You know, chicken feet is a delicacy.
Right. Yeah.
There's a contract about 300 million rands worth of chicken feet that is to be exported to China. It's a delicacy in that market. Now there are markets that are opening up for many of our products. The issue is our ports. Our ports must be able to handle it, efficiently process it, and get it to the destination markets on time. And that, unfortunately, takes time to sort out, because this is not a mess that, you know, if you look at Transnet and look at it over the last 10 to 15 years, we had incidences where they bought wrong locomotive sizes. They spent money on obviously the state capture, and there were so many things that happened. The problem is there's a lot of debt that's been incurred. If you look at Eskom, its debt has ballooned over the last 10 years. Similarly, Transnet's debt has also been ballooning over the last. That only gives you so much of capacity as to what you can do, because you are constrained. I'll give you an example. South Africa, the government has now taken over, has guaranteed a lot of Eskom's debt. So if you look at, and they'll talk about, the minister will talk about it more in his budget speech during the course of, I think it's 21st of February when the budget speech will be mentioned. But one of our bigger challenges is our debt as a country. And the fact, remember, as a country, we incorporate our SOEs because they're state-owned enterprises. Now they're guaranteeing those debt. Currently, government is paying R1 billion a day just on interest.
Wow.
R1 billion a day just on interest. 20% of our budgeted expenditure goes towards servicing our debt. That's a massive number.
Definitely.
Now the problem with that is that means it's less going towards education, less going towards healthcare, less going towards infrastructure. That's the challenge. Now, the only way you can address it is firstly cutting expenditure in areas that are non, and the elephant in the room, unfortunately, and they can't do it this year, is because it's an election year, is they cannot cut jobs within the public sector.
Right.
But they're going to have to, and the potential is that you could see some raising in taxes in certain areas, and that's a potential risk in this budget that takes place as well. So my thing is, I don't think in the short term this transport and freight and the like will be addressed effectively. I think they will make some positive progress, but it will take time, and it will require some participation with the private sector to see some improvement, hopefully over the next 2 to 3 years.
You know, in keeping with this downgrade that we have faced, how important, is it to have fiscal consolidation for South Africa, especially around this time? As you mentioned, it is an election year, but public spending needs to be cut. How is this going to be managed?
To be honest, I don't think you're going to see any major surprises in the budget in terms of cutting significant public expenditure. They can't cut jobs, not in an election year.
Yeah.
They cannot cut the social grant. Already, President Ramaphosa has already talked about, the grant and wanting it. It's going to be there for the next year or two. It's going to be there. At least definitely this year.
Yes.
They'll think about it in February 2025, whether they want to make any changes. So that's going to be here. Make no mistake about it. They're going to have to look at other alternatives as to how they fund it. So yes, they will try and cut back in terms of expenditure in certain areas. What they're going to do means less spending on infrastructure. And that's where the most important necessities required is on infrastructure, whether it's roads. I mean, we're driving around in many areas in Durban, and if you go into Johannesburg, there's potholes, there's a lot of those challenges in terms of the roads. But infrastructure in terms of our ports, upgrading water. Samuel was talking earlier, and on the program I heard as well, in terms of the water issues based in Phoenix and Verulam and those places. The water infrastructure in many of the cities and towns in the country is dilapidated, is aging. And the problem is those municipalities and those politicians and governments that have been in place provincially have not looked after that. There was a lot of money. Make no mistake, eThekwini 15 years ago, 20 years ago, was a fantastically well-managed, well-resourced municipality.
Right. Yeah.
Fantastic. Its balance sheet was top-notch. Today, it is in financial difficulty. And that's the issue. There's only so much you can raise rates, and people are getting heartful, to use the word. That is a fact.
Yep, absolutely.
So you have to see that. So similarly, I don't see that in the budget come the few weeks time, there will be any major cutbacks in terms of constraining or trying. They will try and cut here and there, and it will be infrastructure related. They will obviously try to manage that. They're hoping for some improvement in terms of economic growth, and there could be some surprises in terms of tax. Definitely not VAT. I don't think VAT, because VAT is something that impacts the majority of the people. But you will see it creeping either again in fuel. You'll see it creeping in terms of sin taxes. You'll see it creeping in a potentially, I think, in inheritance and the upper end in terms of the wealth brackets as well. There could be some areas around that. So I think there's not much room for the minister to maneuver. Right. But he will want to make sure he's under pressure from his alliance partners to make sure that no major job cuts, and secondly, no cut in grants. Those are two key election components to ensure that the ANC and the alliance partners have a chance of still trying to stay in power come the next 4 years.
It's essential for the survival, so to speak. Yeah. Sorry. Yes. Go ahead, Samuel.
You'll agree that the servicing of the debt. The servicing of the debt has got two components. The one component is it's international debt. It's not local debt. So we borrow in dollars, we pay back in dollars. So every time the rand weakens, and we've seen the rand over the last year, this time I think it was 16, now it's sitting at 19. So every time the rand weakens, correct, our debt gets bigger. So would I be correct in saying the ANC is relying on BRICS to bail them out of the debt?
Sure. I think there is definitely some element of that. South Africa, though, relative to many of the other major emerging markets like Turkey, Brazil, and a couple of the other big emerging markets, our debt component still, while foreign debt is still substantial, our foreign currency related debt still is around less than 30% of total debt. So we're still fortunate from that perspective. Whereas if you look at Turkey and look at what Turkey's currency has done over the last 2 to 3 years, is because a big part of their debt issuance is in hard currencies of dollars and euros, whereas we still 70% of our debt is still denominated in rands. So that still gives us some stability. Secondly, while foreigners have been big holders of our debt and of our equity market, over the last 4 years, they've sold off close to 50 billion rands worth of our debt and equities over the last 3 to 4 years. So they've been big net sellers of our debt and our equities over that period of time. And the biggest buyers still of our debt is our pension funds. The PIC through our government employee pension funds, all of the Eskom employee, all our pension funds remain the biggest buyers of our debt. That gives us some stability in terms of at least from a debt perspective. But Samuel's right in terms of the fact that you still have around 25-30% of your debt issuance in a dollar or a euro or a Japanese yen currency. Any movements in that does impact us as well. So I think it's a tough year, but don't be disillusioned or disheartened by the IMF, headlines, IMF cuts. Okay, 1.8 to 1%, yes, it's a big cut. But from where we were in 2023 going into 2024, it's still anticipated to be a better year than last year. So at least we're making some positive progress, not progress that we would like to make, but
it is progress nonetheless.
Progress in
we
the
take
right
it as a
direction.
win. We take it as a win. South Africa is a powerhouse economy in our region, of course, right? There's no doubt about that. So how is this outlook likely to impact the entire Southern African region? How would it affect our neighboring countries as well?
Sub-Saharan Africa, I think growth is still anticipated to be just over 3% or so. So I think relatively still decent growth expected. IMF talked about, I think it's 3.3 or somewhere in that region for Sub-Saharan Africa. Very importantly, there's I forget the name, but it's called the ACFA, or African Free Trade that's now been started. And Ramaphosa has been talking about it today and yesterday, talking about this year. That encourages trade between African countries, would reduce the low customs. Remember, Samuel and I, in last week's program of Privo, we talked about, what will be the impact of South Africa because of our stance around the ICJ and, with our big trading partners in the West. And one of the things I mentioned was that South Africa had recently just an agreement was renewed again with what is called AGOA. AGOA is the American, free trade agreement with African countries. This agreement now that South Africa is doing and with other African countries is for free trade within Africa. And that opens up massive opportunities to trade freely within the African continent.
Yeah. Opening up new African markets as well.
So we must not underestimate it. And guess which superpower is honing and focusing on this continent and trying to make massive inroads? China.
Yeah.
China is doing it through how? Not the old ways of the colonial powers of the West that used to use the thing, where either first they come and colonize and they move on, but then they use the world banks and the like to loan, put onerous restrictions and sort of terms, and then when you default, then they come in and they grab. China is doing it differently. They're going in and saying, well, we'll build this road, we'll build this highway. Look what they're doing with that Pakistan and the Silk Route and the like. Yeah. Who's being one of the big funders of that? China. Look within Africa and many of the African countries, but China's a smart operator. They're doing it because those countries that they're going into, they are resource-rich countries.
Absolutely.
Resource-rich countries. They're going in and putting the infrastructure, whether it's rail, whether it's road, whether it's setting up ports. They're helping to go and fund that. But they know for 50 years, there's going to be a security of supply of important resources for their country. Remember, China is still the biggest consumer of commodities in the world. South Africa, we are a big exporter of platinum.
Right.
We're a big exporter of coal. We're a big exporter of iron ore. The biggest consumer of iron ore and platinum, China. China. Now think about all the other African countries, Ghana, which is gold, and they're reliant on China as a consumer. Now China is coming in and saying they're doing that. So if these countries, if the African countries, hopefully over time, remember, we're a large continent.
Yes.
We're resource rich. We've got a big population. There's a lot of positives. The negatives are lack of infrastructure, and there's improvement being made there. So infrastructure as improves means more trade and more economic growth on the back of that. And secondly, education. Education is slowly improving in certain parts. We've had I'm still concerned a hell of a lot still around where our basic education in South Africa has gone. But still in other parts of Africa, there has been some improvements in terms of education and literacy. And as you see improvements in that, that will drive professionals, that will drive entrepreneurs, and that will drive trade. So we stand to benefit if there's more and more of trade between African countries. It only stands to benefit us substantially going forward. Don't underestimate it. America's done it through their America and South American. They've got their free trade agreements between Canada, America, and many of the South American countries. You've got it in Europe through the euro. There's free trade. Why can't Africa do it?
Correct.
Why can we not do it? Put the egos, put all of those things behind. Focus on improving the economies of the countries and improving the lives of the majority of the African population.
Absolutely, and that's something that we should be looking at. Yes, Samuel?
In hindsight, politically, so I fully endorse the points that my good friend Hassan is saying. The other part of free trade is it comes at a price, and the price politically is you have to open your borders. And so when you open your borders, so there's two legs to this. The one leg is technologically, we outstrip any country on the continent.
Right.
Technologically. So we able, instead of them buying from the US, America, Europe, and the like, they'll come down south because it's cheaper, because there's no freight apart from road freight.
All right.
So they'll use our ports. If they're going to use our ports, they'll use our rail or our roads. So there's that benefit. But the downside to it, and not downside, some people see a downside, some people will see it as upside. Free trade equals open borders. And open borders equals more foreigners, either way.
Yeah.
More here than there, and two, higher crime, undocumented laborers, more skullduggery, more this, more that. And so we need to be able to balance it. And I think the ANC, and you've got to give credit where credit is due, they're doing a pretty good job on that. Because it's quite a complex thing, and they need to be commended. Whether the end result will give us what we think it will, I don't think so. But what it will do, in support of what Hassan's saying, we'll achieve that 3%. And it's called organic growth. So we'll achieve 3% without doing anything other than taking a principled policy position on free trade. That's what I want to say.
Do you agree with that, Hassan? Are we likely to see, if we adopt this, we'll get an influx of unwanted aspects, on our country, a strain perhaps?
Look, I think if you look at Europe and what happened with the Brexit, look what happened in UK. UK is now wanting to say, maybe we should not have had Brexit.
Absolutely.
Because they've lost so much of skills and labor which the British themselves do not want to participate and do certain jobs. Now, there's so much of yes, everything has pros and cons. That's nature in most decisions we make in life. There will be a positive and a potential negative. Similarly here.
Yes.
But I think the positives outweigh more of the negatives, and I strongly believe free trade over time within the African continent will have a positive impact on South Africa and majority of the other African countries.
It shall benefit us all. So to get the Hassan Motala outlook on this whole report, Hassan, what are we looking at 2024? What are we likely to see? We don't have a crystal ball. There's a lot going to be happening this year in terms of our on our political side as well. From the economic perspective, yes, you did give us some indication, but how are we likely to see this year go?
Sure. 2024 is a big year, not only from a South African perspective, it's a massive year in terms of a global perspective. And the key issue, one of the key events that are taking place globally is elections in many countries. I think the number I got is around 40 countries that are having elections this year.
Wow. We know the United States is.
And the United States obviously India more closer to, I think it's there around November or so, end of the year. So they obviously a big election that will take place in that country. But for us, we're potentially going to be, in May this year. That we will probably have our election as well. The thing is this, these are massive events. And, as Samuel and you chatted earlier about what could be the outcome of our election, that has a massive impact in terms of also the economy, financial markets and the like as well. If an outcome is viewed as being quite negative, as in where more of a leftist leaning alliance comes into play within you could see financial volatility within the markets. We must anticipate something like whether it's be the rand, our stock markets, they could come under a lot more pressure. So I think we must. But if you get, and I think a potentially positive outcome could be if an ANC still has around below a majority, but where you have strong potentially some minorities that can be power brokers, like as Samuel talked about the Green Party.
Yes,
those could influence and have potentially positive impacts in terms of how it's perceived and the outlook is looked as well. So it's going to be an important year for us. I think running up through to May, things will be steady, should be relatively steady. The outcome of that does have an impact. So I'm still of the view that potentially more than 1% growth come for 2024. But it's the elections do play a part, and very importantly, the improvement in our freight and logistics and transport will play a major part. So let us not underestimate that, because the rand is weakened, which is beneficial for our exports. And if we're exporting a lot more, that means we're earning the hard currency. That means we will be generating good revenues and good tax revenues as well. Secondly, it means more job creation if you see that coming through. And thirdly, a weaker currency has seen an influx of foreigners coming in, and that is continuing. In fact, I believe there's one or two more air carriers that are to bring in either new flights or additional flights that they're currently bringing, which means more and more tourists coming in and spending in our country. There was if I remember, there was an article I read the other day that talked about comparing Johannesburg, Cape Town, and comparing it to major first world countries, but also major emerging market countries. We are very competitive in terms of cost of living here.
Right.
But not only cost, say somebody coming on a holiday here, and whether you're eating at a restaurant, in terms of your transport and the like, we are extremely competitive.
Yes.
Very competitive. A dinner for 4 in South Africa easily, for $40, somebody, a family of four can eat comfortably for $40. In the States, $150.
Absolutely. When you go to these these fancy cafes in Dubai, and you open the menu and they got karak tea and you just see 40. It's like, it's not 40 rand, it's 40 dirham, which is times 5. And I, over this last holiday, I went to a very plush farm, like in the Cape Winelands, basically. Beautiful place. And a cup of coffee was 35 rand.
Yeah.
And I thought to myself, if this was a foreign destination, we would be seeing that in a foreign currency. So
100%.
As a foreigner, that's like it's like about $1 or so, it's $2.
They use an example where they took a popular brand coffee chain and looked at South Africa. A tall cappuccino here, $2.20 here in South Africa, comparing it to New York, which is close to $6.
Wow.
$5.50 or $6.
Yeah.
Massive differences.
Huge difference.
So I think we got to look at it that there are positives.
Yeah.
Don't be disheartened, disillusioned. We must be one of the key things. And I'm going to reiterate it, and I think everybody's going to reiterate it in the studio over the next couple of months till the elections. And this weekend in particular, and you have the ability to read online. If you have not registered, make sure you register.
Register to vote. Absolutely.
This is an extremely important year in terms of voting. So please make sure that if you have not registered, please vote. You can do it online as well.
You're right.
Vote, at least register so that when the time comes and we've got at least the next 4 months or so at least to then think about properly who we would like to vote come elections either in May or June this year as well.
Register to vote.elections.org.za. That's register to vote, all one word, .elections.org.za. That is the website address. That's the IEC link whereby you can go in and register. News just in as well. Stage 3, load shedding will continue. We get those messages coming through. Brother Hassan, shukran. Thank you so much for your time and gracing us with your presence this evening in studio and unpacking some very important, financial information which pertains to our country.
Fantastic. It's been a pleasure to be here, as always. I mean, generally normally with Yunus.
With Yunus, yeah.
Fantastic to be interacting with you tonight, Siraj.
Jazakallah, really appreciate it.
Inshallah, hopefully in the future we'll interact more as well.
Inshallah. Mr. Samuel Kennedy, thank you so much as well. Pulling no punches there. I look forward to coming closer to the elections. We're going to get various political parties in here, and we're going to put you as the main guy.
Yeah, look, I think Siraj, it's a first interaction with yourself, apart from the dinner, which was very impromptu. But let me just say,
we need to get that guy in studio as well.
Absolutely. He said he doesn't want to be in the studio with me. But let me just say as a qualifier, to put everybody at ease, the term of office of the 6th administration ends in May.
In May, yeah.
So elections are not going to be in May. The president has 90 days in terms of the constitution to declare an election date. So we're looking forward to that with bated breath. And we're saying to voters, just remember one thing. And let me just say to voters as well, Hassan. You spoke about leftist socialist, right? Land expropriation without compensation is very high on the agenda. Right? Our people, we talk minorities, are property owners in general. Correct? So we need to be very mindful of that the leftist ideology or the leftist ideals has at its apex land expropriation without compensation. And who are the people who will be most affected? By and large, minorities. And we just need to bear that in mind.
And we shall leave you with that thought. Thank you so much, Samuel. I'm sure, you can pick it up.
Appreciate you.
We can pick it up again. Well, not next week. It will be Laylatul Mi'raj. So the following week, inshallah, I'm sure Brother Yunus Sakur will be back. Now we have a Mayyat announcement. Ismail Jamal, father of Muhammad Amin Jamal of North Beach and father-in-law of our very own Aisha Jamal, who was a presenter here at Radio Al Ansar, has returned to the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah ta'ala grant him the highest stages in Jannah and grant his family Sabrun Jameel. Also tomorrow there's a Ward 31 war room meeting. Yeah, that's it. It's a war room meeting taking place tomorrow. That's the 1st of February at 10 a.m. at the Al Ansar Hall at 189 West Road. So if you are from the area, or this is of interest to you, then you can be part of that program. 10 a.m. tomorrow at the Al Ansar Hall at 189 West Road. Thank you so much for lending me your ear this evening. It's been great. Hope you have a wonderful evening. Good night. Sleep tight. And we shall pick it up again with more live programming from 4 a.m. tomorrow morning. But I will be back with you at 6 p.m. With another episode of Straight Talk. Have a good evening. Have a splendid day. Thank you so much, Monley, as well, for your technical assistance. Until tomorrow, but from the News in Focus team, until the next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
The chaos and destruction in the Gaza Strip is beyond comprehension. Virtually everyone is displaced, hungry, and